The torch flames dance against the ancient stone walls of Harrenhal, casting grotesque shadows that seem to writhe with a life of their own. In the servants' quarters, a young girl with matted brown hair scrubs the floor with raw, bleeding hands. No one here knows her true name. To them, she is Arya, just another war orphan lucky to have work. But beneath the grime and peasant rags, she is Arya Stark of Winterfell, and she carries a secret that could reshape the entire war. Jaqen H'ghar, the mysterious Lorathi assassin she freed from a burning cage, has promised her 3 deaths. 3 names, 3 lives she can take with nothing more than a whisper. She has already used 2 of those precious gifts on men who barely mattered in the grand scheme of things. The Tickler, who tortured prisoners in Harrenhal's dungeons with his endless questions and sharp instruments. Sir Amory Lorch, who threw babies at walls during the sack of King's Landing. Both deserved their fate, both paid for their crimes with blood, but neither changed anything meaningful. Now Arya stands at a crossroads of history, though she does not yet know it. The 3rd name sits on her tongue, unspoken, but growing heavier with each passing day. And in the great hall above her, the most powerful man in Westeros plans the destruction of everything she has ever loved. If you are fascinated by alternate timelines and the butterfly effect of small decisions in Game of Thrones, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community of over 10,000 fans who love exploring these what-if scenarios. Ring the bell so you never miss our deep dives into Westeros and beyond. Lord Tywin Lannister sits at the head of the War Council table, his cold green eyes scanning maps of the Riverlands like a predator surveying hunting grounds. At 60 years old, he is still the most feared man in the 7 kingdoms. His mere presence makes hardened knights shift uncomfortably in their seats. He has spent his entire life building Lannister supremacy, crushing every enemy, avenging every slight against his family's honor. The Rains of Castamere learned that lesson when Tywin drowned them in their own minds, extinguishing their entire bloodline as a message to anyone who might dare challenge Lannister authority. The realm has never forgotten that lesson. The Rains of Castamere is more than a song. It is a promise of what happens to those who defy the Lion. Tonight, Tywin reviews reports from across the war-torn continent with the same methodical attention he applies to everything. Robb Stark, the young wolf, has won every battle in the field but is slowly being strangled by Lannister gold and superior strategy. The boy is a talented commander, Tywin admits privately, perhaps even brilliant for his age, but he lacks the political cunning to turn battlefield victories into lasting peace. He has alienated potential allies, overextended his supply lines, and made strategic blunders that will cost him everything eventually. Stannis Baratheon prepares to assault King's Landing with a massive fleet, hundreds of ships sailing from Dragonstone, with religious fanatics and sellswords hungry for plunder. That threat will need to be addressed soon, but Tywin has already set plans in motion. The Tyrells of Highgarden, with their vast wealth and armies, are being courted. A marriage alliance between King Joffrey and Margaery Tyrell will bring their strength to the Lannister cause and crush Stannis between 2 armies. The Game of Thrones spins on, complex and deadly, and Tywin holds more pieces than anyone else. He has spent decades mastering this game, understanding that power is not taken but carefully constructed through alliances, intimidation, and the strategic application of violence. He does not notice the small serving girl who refills his wine cup with practiced efficiency. Why would he? She is beneath his notice, just another nameless peasant in a castle full of them. Harrenhal holds thousands of displaced people, refugees from the war who fled burning villages and massacred towns. One more dirty child means nothing to him. He does not see how her hand trembles slightly as she pours, or how her grey eyes linger on his face with an intensity that does not belong to a simple servant. He does not recognize those eyes as Stark. Eyes, the same shade as Ned Stark's, the man whose execution started this entire war. Arya knows exactly who he is. She has served him wine dozens of times over the past weeks, moving through his presence like a ghost. She has listened to him plan the deaths of her family members with the same casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. She has heard him order the burning of Riverrun, her mother's childhood home, if Lord Edmure Tully does not surrender. She has watched him sentence men to death for minor infractions, with the same indifference one might use to order breakfast. She has seen him humiliate his own son Tyrion, treating the dwarf with contempt despite Tyrion's obvious intelligence and capability, and she has Jacon's promise, one more name, one more death, one more chance to strike at the enemies who destroyed her family. The question that haunts her is whether she should use that precious final name on someone who truly matters or save it for a personal vendetta. The Tickler and Sir Amory were satisfying kills, men who directly hurt people she cared about, but they were ultimately small pieces in a much larger game. Tywin Lannister is the architect of that game. He is the mind behind every Lannister strategy, the hand that moves all the other pieces. Kill him, and everything changes. Leave him alive, and he will eventually destroy everything she loves. That night, after the War Council disperses and the castle settles into uneasy sleep, punctuated by the moans of wounded men and the nervous pacing of sentries, Arya finds Jaqen in the shadows near the Wailing Tower. The faceless man leans against the wall as if he has been waiting for her, which he probably has. His mismatched eyes, one brown and one blue, study her with an expression that might be amusement or approval, or something else entirely. Reading Jaqen is like trying to read a book written in a language she does not understand. A man wonders. If a girl has finally chosen a third name, he says in his peculiar way of speaking, always referring to himself and others in the third person, as if they are all just characters in someone else's story. Arya's heart pounds so hard she thinks it might burst from her chest. Her whole body feels electric with the weight of what she is about to do. The name sits on her tongue, heavy as a sword, dangerous as wildfire. Once spoken, it cannot be unspoken. Once the choice is made, she must live with the consequences forever. She thinks of her father, noble Ned Stark, beheaded on the steps of the great Sept of Baelor, while King Joffrey laughed and her sister Sansa screamed. She thinks of her dancing. Master Syrio Forel, who died protecting her escape from the Red Keep, buying her time with his wooden sword against fully armored Lannister guards. She thinks of her direwolf Nymeria, who she had to drive away to save her life. She thinks of everything the Lannisters have taken from her. Tywin Lannister, she whispers into the darkness. The words hang in the air between them like an executioner's axe poised to fall. Jaqen's expression does not change, but something flickers in those strange eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or approval, or possibly concern for what this child has just set in motion. A man hears, a man will obey, but a girl should know that this death will shake the pillars of the world. The death of a king's hand, the richest lord in Westeros, the man who holds the realm together for his grandson, the death of the lion who prowls through everyone's nightmares. Does a girl understand what she has done? Does a girl comprehend the avalanche she has started with 3 small words? Arya thinks of her father, beheaded on the steps of the Great Sept. She thinks of her mother and brother fighting a war they cannot win without a miracle. She thinks of Sansa, trapped in King's Landing like a bird in a golden cage, married to the enemy and forced to smile while they destroy everything she loves. She thinks of Bran and Rickon, whom she believes dead at Winterfell, killed by Theon Greyjoy in his pathetic attempt to prove himself worthy of respect. He deserves it, she says simply, with all the moral certainty of a child who still believes. The world can be divided cleanly into good people and bad people. He is a bad man who does bad things. Jaqen smiles, a rare expression on his usually impassive face. Good and bad are words for children and priests. A man deals in debts and obligations, in promises made and prices paid. A debt shall be paid, because a man keeps his word. It is known when, Arya asks, suddenly afraid that he might drag this out, that Tywin might leave Harrenhal before the debt is collected, soon, before the moon turns again. A girl should not be near when it happens. A girl should have an alibi, witnesses who can swear she was elsewhere doing innocent things. This is important. A man does not wish to see a girl hanged for his work. The next day passes with agonizing slowness, each hour stretching like taffy. Arya goes through her duties in a fog of anticipation and terror. She scrubs floors until her hands bleed. She empties chamber pots and serves meals and tries to be invisible. Every time she sees Tywin, she wonders if it will be the last time. He seems invincible, immortal, a force of nature rather than a man of flesh and blood. How can someone like Jaqen possibly kill him? Tywin is always surrounded by guards, always vigilant, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. His paranoia is legendary. He trusts no one completely, tests his food for poison, varies his routines to prevent patterns that assassins could exploit. But Jaqen is no ordinary assassin. He is faceless, one of the most feared killers in the world. Trained in the House of Black and White in Bravos, across the narrow sea, the faceless men can change their appearance, move like shadows, kill without leaving traces. They are death incarnate, and their services cost more than most kingdoms can afford. If anyone can do the impossible and kill the unkillable, it is him. That evening, Arya is sent to the kitchens to help prepare the evening meal for the officers and lords, still residing in Harrenhal. She works alongside other servants, peeling turnips and carrots with shaking hands that she cannot quite steady. The head cook, a fat woman named Pia, who somehow maintains her cheerful disposition despite the horrors surrounding them, chatters endlessly about nothing important, gossip about which knight is bedding which serving girl, complaints about the quality of flour they have to work with, speculation about when the war might end. Arya tries to focus on her words, tries to make sure she will be remembered here tonight, far from whatever is about to happen. In the Great Hall, Tywin dines alone, as he often does. He prefers solitude to the company of sycophants and fools who say what they think he wants to hear, rather than what he needs to know. A single guard stands at the door, alert but not alarmed. Candles flicker in iron sconces mounted on walls that have seen centuries of violence and betrayal. The old castle creaks and groans around him, a monument to hubris and the futility of human ambition. Harrenhal has destroyed every house that ever held it. The Strongs died out mysteriously. The Lostons went mad. The Wents were scattered to the winds. Perhaps the Lannisters will be next in that cursed lineage. Tywin does not believe in curses. He believes in careful planning, overwhelming force, and the rational application of power. Superstition is for the weak-minded. He does not see the shadow that detaches itself from behind a pillar, moving with inhuman grace. He does not hear the whisper-soft footsteps that should not be possible on the stone floor. He does not feel the presence behind him until it is far too late. A hand covers his mouth, cutting off any cry for help. A blade, thin as a whisper and sharp as broken glass, slides between his ribs with surgical precision, finding his heart with the expertise of someone who has done this 1,000 times before. The Lord of Casterly Rock, the Hand of the King, the Warden of the West, the richest and most powerful man in Westeros, dies without making a sound. His eyes widen in shock and understanding. In his final moment, Tywin Lannister realizes he made a mistake. He got comfortable. He let his guard down in what he thought was a secure location, and that mistake cost him everything. Jaqen lowers the body gently to the floor, arranges it to look as if Tywin simply collapsed from a heart attack or stroke, something plausible for a man of his age under enormous stress. Then he disappears back into the shadows, as silently as he came, a ghost that was never there. The guard at the door notices nothing. The servants passing in the corridor hear nothing. Death came and went like smoke on the wind. It is only when a servant enters an hour later to clear the dishes that anyone realizes what has happened. Her scream echoes through the castle, a sound of pure horror, that brings guards running from every direction. They burst into the hall with weapons drawn, expecting enemies, and find only their commander lying still and cold on the floor. In the kitchens, Arya hears the commotion. Her heart stops. Everything goes silent except for the pounding of blood in her ears. She forces herself to keep peeling vegetables, to act confused and curious like everyone else around her. Pia rushes to the door to see what is happening, her face flushed with excitement at the prospect of fresh gossip. "Someone important has died," she reports breathlessly when she returns. "Maybe one of the lords. They are saying Lord Tywin himself. The whole castle is in chaos. Guards everywhere, servants being questioned. Gods preserve us, what will happen now?" Arya's hands shake so badly she cuts her thumb on the knife. Blood wells up, red as Lannister crimson, red as her father's blood on the steps of the Sept. She watches it drip onto the cutting board and feels both exhilarated and terrified. She has done it. She has killed Tywin Lannister. She has struck a blow against the enemy that matters more than 1,000 battlefield victories. She has changed everything, but she does not yet understand just how much. The news spreads through Harrenhal like wildfire through dry grass, then across the riverlands, on the wings of ravens, then throughout all of Westeros, like a shockwave. Tywin Lannister is dead. The Lion of Casterly Rock has fallen. The hand who held the kingdom together is gone. At first there is confusion about the cause. Some say poison, that he was finally brought down by the same weapon he used against others. Others whisper of dark magic, of northern sorcery, of vengeance from beyond the grave. The maesters, who examine the body with their chains and their knowledge, find the tiny puncture wound between his ribs, so small it is almost invisible, and conclude assassination by someone with professional training. But who could have done it? Who could have penetrated Harrenhal's security, bypassed Tywin's guards, and killed the most paranoid man in the Seven Kingdoms without anyone seeing or hearing anything? The investigation becomes frantic. Suspects are rounded up by the dozens and tortured in the same dungeons where the Tickler once worked. But they know nothing because there is nothing to know. Jaqen H'ghar left no trace, no clue, no trail to follow. He's already gone from Harrenhal, vanished like smoke, just another face in the endless tide of refugees fleeing the war. In King's Landing, Queen Regent Cersei Lannister receives the news while breaking her fast in her solar overlooking the city. She is eating honeyed figs and discussing the day's schedule with her handmaiden when the Maester enters with the raven. She reads the message once, then again, then a third time because her mind refuses to process the words. She drops her wine cup. The golden liquid spreads across the marble floor like blood, like Lannister crimson spilled and wasted. For a moment she cannot breathe, cannot think, cannot process what she has just been told. Her father, the invincible Tywin, dead? Impossible, unthinkable. He has survived rebellions and battles and political intrigue for 40 years. He survived Robert's rebellion. He survived the Greyjoy rebellion. He crushed the Reynes and the Tarbecks. He built House Lannister into the most powerful family in Westeros. He cannot simply die in some drafty castle in the middle of nowhere, killed by an unknown assassin like a common merchant. But the Raven's message is clear, confirmed by multiple sources. Tywin is gone. Her father, the one person she could always rely on to fix everything, to plan everything, to make everything work, is dead. Cersei's first thought is not grief, but panic. Her father was the only thing holding the Lannister war effort together. He was the strategist, the leader, the one everyone feared and obeyed without question. Without him, everything falls apart. The allies held together by gold, and intimidation will scatter like leaves in the wind. The enemies kept at bay by his reputation will smell blood in the water and attack. The careful balance he maintained will collapse into chaos. And her son, King Joffrey, is a sadistic child who cannot rule a chicken coop, let alone the Seven Kingdoms. He has all of his father Robert's vices, without any of his father's charm or battle prowess. He is cruel, impulsive, stupid, and completely incapable of inspiring loyalty in anyone. Cersei summons her uncle, Sir Kevan Lannister, who has been serving as Tywin's second-in-command and acting as Master of Laws on the small council. Kevan arrives within the hour, his face as grey as ash. He looks as shell-shocked as Cersei feels, and that terrifies her even more. Kevan is always steady, always reliable, always calm in a crisis. Seeing him shaken makes the reality of their situation hit home. "We must bring father's body back to Casterly Rock for a proper funeral," Cersei says, her voice shaking despite her attempts at control. The great lion of Casterly Rock deserves to be laid to rest with his ancestors in the crypts beneath the rock where all the Lannister lords are buried. Kevan nods slowly. "The small council will expect you to choose a new hand immediately. We cannot show weakness or uncertainty. The moment there is any question about who commands the Lannister forces, our enemies will strike. Enemies will strike. Lord Mace Tyrell, perhaps, to keep the Tyrells loyal to the Alliance? The Tyrells," Cersei thinks with contempt barely concealed. "Fat flower knights who contributed almost nothing to the war effort, but expect to be rewarded as if they won it single-handedly." Her father arranged Joffrey's marriage to Margaery Tyrell to secure their alliance and bring their army north to fight Stannis, but Cersei knows the Tyrells are only loyal as long as it benefits them. The moment they see a better opportunity, they will abandon the Lannisters without a second thought. "What about Tyrion?" Kevan asks carefully, knowing he is treading on dangerous ground. "He proved himself at the Battle of the Blackwater. He saved the city when everyone else was ready to surrender. The men respect him. The small folk respect him. Even the nobles grudgingly admit he has ability. My imp brother, Cersei, spits with venom, will never be hanged. I would rather give it to a stable boy. I would rather appoint a trained monkey. Tyrion is a monster who has brought nothing but shame to our family since the day he was born and killed our mother. But the problem remains, heavy and inescapable. Who can possibly fill Tywin's shoes? Who has his strategic brilliance, his political cunning, his ability to inspire fear and loyalty in equal measure? No one, Cersei realizes with growing dread. Absolutely no one in the entire Seven Kingdoms can replace him. Meanwhile, in the Riverlands, Robb Stark receives the news in his war camp outside the ruins of Harrenhal. His mother, Catelyn, sits beside him, her face worn and tired from months of worry and grief. They have lost so much already. Ned dead, Bran and Rickon reportedly dead. Sansa a prisoner. Only Arya remains unaccounted for, and everyone assumes she is dead as well, killed in the chaos following Ned's execution. The Maester reads the Raven's message in his dry, emotionless voice. At first, Robb thinks it must be a trick, some sort of Lannister deception meant to lure him into a trap. But the message comes from multiple sources, including prisoners and spies, embedded in Harrenhal. Tywin Lannister is truly dead, killed by an unknown assassin, and the Lannister command structure is in chaos. The young wolf feels something he has not felt in months: hope. Real genuine hope that this war might actually be won. Tywin was the only Lannister who mattered, he says to his war council, gathered in the command tent around a table covered with maps and markers representing different forces. Without him they have Cersei, who is rash and emotional and makes decisions based on pride rather than strategy. They have Tyrion, who is clever but despised by his own family and has no real authority. Their alliance with the Tyrells is already shaky, built on a marriage that has not even happened yet. If we move now, we can end this war before winter arrives. His bannermen erupt in excited conversation. Lord Roose Bolton, sitting quietly in the corner as he always does, watches with calculating eyes that reveal nothing. Lord Rickard Karstark, still bitter over the death of his sons killed by Jaime Lannister while escaping captivity, pounds the table in approval. The Great John roars about marching on Casterly Rock itself and burning it to the ground, making the Lannisters pay for every drop of northern blood they have spilled. But Catelyn Stark remains silent, her face troubled. She has learned, through painful experience, to be wary of good fortune. In the Game of Thrones, every blessing comes with a hidden curse. Every victory contains the seeds of future defeat. "My son," she says quietly when the others have finished celebrating and planning, This changes things, yes, but we must be careful. The Lannisters are wounded, which makes them dangerous in ways they were not before. A cornered lion is deadlier than a confident one. Desperate people make desperate choices. Robb nods, though his eyes still shine with the thrill of this unexpected turn. We will be careful, Mother, but we will also be bold. This is our chance to win the war, to go home, to rebuild what was destroyed. We cannot let fear hold us back now. What neither of them knows is that in the chaos following Tywin's death, other players across Westeros are making their own moves based on this new information. In the Eyrie, Petyr Baelish, called Littlefinger, receives the news and immediately begins calculating how to turn this to his advantage. He has been playing a long game, climbing from nothing to Master of Coin to Lord of Harrenhal, and now he sees new opportunities opening. In Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon sees an opportunity to press his claim before the Lannisters can reorganize under new leadership. In Dorne, Prince Doran Martell, who has spent years quietly plotting revenge for his sister Elia's murder during Robert's rebellion, decides the time has finally come to act. The Lannisters are vulnerable. The perfect moment for vengeance has arrived. The careful balance Tywin maintained through fear and gold and strategic brilliance is collapsing. And into that vacuum rush, a dozen different ambitions, each one potentially catastrophic for the realm. Back in Harrenhal, Arya struggles to process what she has done. She killed a man, yes, but not just any man. She killed one of the most important people in Westeros. She changed the course of history with 3 words spoken in darkness to a man whose face keeps changing. The weight of it threatens to crush her. At night, she lies awake and imagines her father's voice. Would he be proud of her for striking at the enemy? Or would he be disappointed that she resorted to assassination instead of honorable combat? She will never know. Dincan finds her one last time before he leaves Harrenhal for good, before he disappears into the chaos of the Riverlands and vanishes from her life. A girl has learned that death is power, he tells her. The power to end a life is the power to change the world. A girl wields that power well. A girl has potential. I didn't think it would feel like this, Arya admits. I thought I would be happy. I thought killing him would make everything better. But I just feel scared and confused, and I don't know what happens next. Fear is the beginning of wisdom. A girl begins to understand the weight of the gift she has been given. Death is not a toy for children. It is a serious thing with serious consequences that ripple outward in ways no one can predict. Perhaps someday a girl will come to the House of Black and White in Braavos and learn properly. Perhaps a girl will become no one and serve the many-faced god. Arya meets his strange, mismatched eyes. Maybe I will. Jaqen smiles and hands her a strange coin made of iron, worn smooth by countless hands. Valar Morghulis, he says. All men must die. Valar Dohaeris, Arya responds, without knowing why she knows the words, without understanding their full meaning. All men must serve. Then Jaqen H'ghar walks away and disappears into the night, leaving Arya alone with the consequences of her choice and the iron coin heavy in her pocket. The funeral of Tywin Lannister is held at Casterly Rock 3 weeks later, after his body has been transported across half of Westeros in a wagon surrounded by guards. It is a spectacle of gold and crimson, of lions and roses, of forced unity barely concealing panic and ambition. Every major house sends representatives because not attending would be a political statement no one can afford to make. Even Robb Stark, in a gesture of political cunning advised by his mother, sends a formal condolence message that is dripping with barely concealed satisfaction. Cersei stands at the funeral as stone-faced as her father ever was, dressed in mourning black with her golden hair perfectly arranged. But inside she is screaming. She has been forced by political necessity to appoint Mace Tyrell as Hand of the King to keep the Tyrell alliance intact. The fat Lord of Highgarden has all the strategic brilliance of a garden slug, but he commands the largest army in Westeros outside of the north, and Cersei cannot afford to lose him. Without the Tyrells, the Lannisters cannot hold King's Landing against Stannis or any other challenger. Tyrion stands on the other side of the bier, his mismatched eyes studying everything and everyone with that unsettling intelligence that reminds Cersei so much of their father. She hates him for it. She hates that he proved himself in battle while Joffrey cowered in the Red Keep. She hates that some of the lords whisper he should be Hand instead of Tyrell. She hates that he is a Lannister despite being a dwarf. Most of all, she hates that she needs him now. After the ceremony, after the body has been sealed in the crypts beneath the rock, Cersei summons Tyrion to her solar. They face each other across a table laden with wine and fruit that neither touches. "We must work together," Cersei says through gritted teeth, forcing out the words like they cause physical pain. "For the family, for our survival." Tyrion's scarred face, still healing from the wounds he received at the Blackwater, twists into something that might be a smile. "How touching. You have never cared about family before, dear sister, only yourself and your children." "Father is dead," Cersei snaps. "Everything he built is falling apart. The Tyrells scheme against us. The Starks grow bolder. Stannis still threatens from Dragonstone. If we fight each other now, if we allow our personal hatreds to destroy us, we lose everything. Everything Father worked for, everything he built gone." Tyrion studies her for a long moment, trying to determine if this is genuine or just another manipulation. "What do you want from me? Help me hold the kingdom together until Joffrey comes of age, until he learns to actually rule instead of just playing king. Help me end this war, just playing king. Help me end this war, and in return, I will make you master of coin with real authority, not just a title. I will give you genuine power, not just the scraps Father tossed you like bones to a dog. It is the closest thing to an apology Cersei has ever offered, and they both know it. Tyrion considers carefully. His father never respected him, never saw him as anything but a shameful embarrassment to be hidden away. But now his father is dead, and the sister who has always hated him is offering him real authority. "I accept," he says finally. "But I have conditions. You stop treating me like a monster in public and private. You give me genuine authority in the small council, and you actually consider my advice even when it contradicts your instincts or what you want to hear." Cersei's jaw clenches hard enough to crack teeth, but she nods. "Agreed. It is a fragile alliance built on desperation rather than trust, but it is better than open warfare between them. And for the Lannisters fighting on multiple fronts, it might be just enough to survive." In the north, Robb Stark prepares for the largest offensive of the war. With Tywin dead and the Lannister command structure in chaos, he has a window of opportunity that will not last long. His mother begs him to be cautious, to consolidate his gains and negotiate from a position of strength rather than risk everything on one bold stroke. But Robb is young and has won every battle he has fought. He has never known defeat. He believes in his own invincibility. He believes the gods are on his side, that justice will prevail. He believes that with Tywin dead, victory is inevitable and within reach. He is terribly, fatally wrong. What Robb does not know is that Rose Bolton, his bannerman and one of his most trusted commanders, has been in secret communication with the Lannisters for months. Bolton is a pragmatist who has watched the war closely and concluded that the Starks, despite their victories in the field, will ultimately lose. The North is too poor, too isolated, too outnumbered. Tywin's death changes the calculus, but not enough to matter in Bolton's cold calculation. The Lannisters still have more gold, more men, and more allies. The North is overstretched and running out of supplies with winter approaching. Bolton has been waiting for the right moment to betray Robb and switch sides. Tywin's death might actually accelerate his plans rather than cancel them. A desperate Cersei will pay even more than her father would have for the young wolf's head on a spike. The trap is set at the Twins, the castle of Lord Walder Frey that controls the crossing of the Green Fork. Robb needs to cross the river to continue his campaign, and that means negotiating passage from the notoriously prickly Frey. Robb has already insulted Frey by breaking his promise to marry one of Frey's daughters. choosing instead to marry Talisa Maega, a healer from Volantis he met on campaign and fell in love with despite the political consequences. It was a foolish decision, born of youth and passion, the kind of mistake Ned Stark might have understood but never would have made himself. The Red Wedding proceeds almost exactly as it would have in the original timeline, despite Tywin's death. Because Tywin was not the sole architect of that betrayal, Bolton and Frey acted on their own ambitions, their own calculations, their own determination to be on the winning side regardless of honor or oaths. They coordinated with the Lannisters. Yes, but the plan was already in motion before Tywin died. And Cersei, desperate for a victory to consolidate her position, approves it immediately when Bolton's messenger arrives in King's Landing. The wedding feast begins with music and wine, with forced celebration and hollow pleasantries. Robb sits at the high table with his pregnant wife, believing he has successfully negotiated passage and mended fences with the offended Frey. His mother sits nearby, her instincts screaming warnings she cannot quite articulate. She notices things. The doors being barred, the musicians positioning themselves strategically, the way Roose Bolton watches everything with cold, dead eyes. When the music changes to the Rains of Castamere, Catelyn knows. The Lannister song, the song of extermination and total victory. She screams a warning, but it is too late. The crossbow bolts fly, the swords come out. The Frey men fall upon the northern soldiers with savage efficiency. Robb takes a bolt to the chest, then another, then another. He falls to his knees, looking at his mother with confusion and betrayal in his young eyes. Talisa is butchered where she sits, her unborn child dying with her. The Great John fights like a demon and takes down 8 men before being overwhelmed. Small John Umber dies, shielding his king with his body. Catelyn Stark, who has already lost so much, who has watched her entire world crumble piece by piece, grabs a knife and holds it to the throat of Walder Frey's young wife. She begs for her son's life, offers herself in exchange, promises anything and everything if they will just let Robb live. Lord Walder laughs. "I will find another wife," he says. Roose Bolton approaches Robb, who is still alive despite multiple wounds, still trying to reach his mother. "The Lannisters send their regards," Bolton says, and drives a dagger into Robb's heart. Catelyn Stark, the last of her sanity breaking like ice under too much weight, slits the girl's throat. Then someone cuts her own throat, and she dies on the floor of the twins, surrounded by the bodies of her son and his men, the last of House Stark's hope bleeding out into the rushes. News of the Red Wedding reaches King's Landing just as Cersei is beginning to believe the war might be lost despite her best efforts. Instead, it is won. Without Robb Stark, the North collapses into chaos and infighting. The remaining Northern Lords bend the knee or are hunted down and executed. House Bolton becomes the new Warden of the North, replacing the destroyed Starks. The Freys are rewarded with Riverrun and control of the Riverlands. Cersei credits herself for the victory, never knowing that it had almost nothing to do with her or her strategies. She believes she has proven she can rule without her father, that she can be the leader House Lannister needs. But she does know one thing with certainty. They won despite Tywin's death, not because of him. The system he built, the alliances he forged, the strategy he implemented, all survived without him at the helm. This realization makes her dangerous in new ways. She becomes convinced of her own brilliance, her own indispensability. She stops listening to advice from Tyrion or Keevan or anyone else. She makes decisions based on paranoia and pride rather than careful calculation. She sees enemies everywhere and strikes at shadows. In Harrenhal, Arya learns of her brother's death weeks later through the terrible efficiency of camp gossip and merchant tales. She is no longer serving at the castle, having escaped during the chaos following Tywin's assassination with the help of Gendry and Hot Pie. She's on the road, trying to find her way back to her family, when she overhears travelers at an inn discussing the Red Wedding. The world stops. Everything goes silent. The sounds of the inn, the clatter of dishes and buzz of conversation fade into nothing. Arya cannot breathe, cannot think, cannot process what she is hearing. Robb is dead. Her mother is dead. The entire northern army is massacred. Everyone she loves is gone. She staggers outside into the night air and vomits until there is nothing left inside her but bile and horror. Then she lies in the mud behind the stable and wishes she could die too. She prays to every god she knows, the old gods and the new, the many-faced god that Jaqen taught her about, begging them to let her die and end this nightmare. But the gods do not answer, or perhaps they do, but their answer is silence. She does not die. She survives, as Starks always do, through stubbornness and fury, and the refusal to let the world break her completely. And as she lies there in the mud, covered in filth and tears and vomit, she makes a vow that burns hotter than dragonfire. She will kill everyone responsible for this. Every Bolton, every Frey, every Lannister who played a part in destroying her family. She will hunt them down one by one and make them pay. Her list of names, which already included Cersei and Joffrey and the Mountain, grows exponentially longer. Walder Frey, Rose Bolton, Tywin Lannister is already dead by her hand, but there are so many others who deserve the same fate. And somewhere across the narrow sea, in a house painted black and white in the city of Braavos, the faceless men wait. For a girl who has already proven she understands the power of death and is willing to pay the price to wield it. Months pass, the seasons turn, the war continues in smaller ways, but without Robb Stark, it is no longer a real contest for the Iron Throne. Stannis Baratheon is defeated at the Battle of the Blackwater when the Tyrell army arrives at the last moment to save King's Landing. He retreats to Dragonstone with the remnants of his fleet, bitter and broken, but not quite finished. The Tyrells consolidate their power in King's Landing, with Margaery manipulating the young king with a skill that terrifies Cersei and makes her increasingly paranoid. The realm settles into an uneasy peace enforced by Lannister gold and Bolton cruelty. But something fundamental is missing. Without Tywin, there is no unifying force holding everything together with an iron grip. The small council is a nest of vipers scheming against each other for personal advantage. Cersei and Tyrion maintain their alliance only through necessity and mutual contempt, constantly threatening to collapse into open warfare. Mace Tyrell is useless as Hand of the King, more concerned with advancing his family's interests than actually governing the realm. He makes decisions that benefit House Tyrell while letting everything else decay. The realm is held together by momentum and habit rather than any actual leadership or vision. The institutions Tywin built continue functioning because no one knows how to dismantle them, but they are slowly rotting from within. And in the shadows, forces are gathering that will eventually tear it all apart with fire and blood. In Meereen, across the narrow sea on the continent of Essos, Daenerys Targaryen builds her power day by day. She has 3 dragons now, growing larger every day, breathing fire hot enough to melt stone. She has conquered 3 slave cities and freed hundreds of thousands of people. She has an army of unsullied, the finest disciplined soldiers in the world, who obey her without question. She has the Second Sons, a mercenary company that switch sides to join her cause. She has advisors like Sir Barristan Selmy, the greatest living knight, and Jorah Mormont, who loves her despite his past betrayals. News of the chaos in Westeros reaches her through merchants and spies. She learns that the usurper Robert Baratheon is dead. She learns that the kingdoms are tearing themselves apart in civil war. She learns that the Lannisters, who destroyed her family and stole her birthright, are vulnerable in ways they have never been before. She begins to seriously consider invasion. Not tomorrow, not next month, but soon, when her dragons are large enough to carry her into battle. When her army is strong enough to take and hold the 7 kingdoms. When the political situation in Westeros is chaotic enough that no united force can stand against her. In Dorne, In the shadow of the Red Mountains, Prince Doran Martell finally acts on decades of careful planning and patient revenge. He reveals to his daughter Arya that he has been grooming her to marry into House Targaryen and help restore the dragons to Westeros. He has been in secret communication with Daenerys through intermediaries, offering alliance and support. The Martells have not forgotten that Elia Martell, Doran's sister, was raped and murdered by Gregor Clegane during the sack of King's Landing, while Tywin Lannister gave the orders, or at least permitted it to happen. With Tywin dead and the Lannister regime weakened by internal divisions, the time for vengeance has finally arrived. Dorne will have its day. Blood will answer blood. In the Vale of Arryn, isolated behind its impregnable mountains, Petyr Baelish consolidates control over the Knights of the Vale through his manipulation of the sickly young Lord Robert Arryn and his mother Lysa, whom Petyr married after murdering her previous husband. He has Sansa Stark hidden away at the Eyrie, disguised as his bastard daughter, Elaine Stone. She is the last known legitimate heir to Winterfell, a pawn he plans to use when the time is right to seize control of the North. Littlefinger plays a game so complex that even he sometimes loses track of all the pieces. But he knows one thing with certainty: chaos is a ladder, and Tywin's death created more chaos than anyone expected. In chaos, there is opportunity for a man clever enough and ruthless enough to seize it. And in Braavos, the greatest of the free cities, a young girl with grey eyes and a growing list of names trains with the faceless men in the House of Black and White. She learns to fight with staff and sword and dagger. She learns to move silently through shadows. She learns to change her face and voice and mannerisms, becoming other people so completely that even friends would not recognize her. She learns that death is a gift given to the many-faced god, and that she is learning to be his instrument. But she never forgets who she is, no matter how many faces she wears. She is Arya Stark of Winterfell, daughter of Ned Stark and Catelyn Tully, and she has scores to settle that grow longer with each passing day. The consequences of her choice to name Tywin Lannister ripple outward in ways she could never have predicted or controlled. Yes, she killed the most dangerous enemy her family had. Yes, she struck a blow that weakened the Lannisters and threw their war effort into disarray. But she did not kill the system that destroyed her family. She did not prevent the Red Wedding or save her brother or bring her mother home. She won a single battle in a war that had already been lost. In fact, one could argue with grim hindsight that she made things worse in some ways. Tywin, for all his cruelty and ruthless ambition, was a stabilizing force in Westeros. He was predictable in his brutality, rational in his calculations, and capable of long-term strategic planning. He understood that ruling requires more than just force. It requires institutions, laws, a functioning government that can collect taxes and maintain roads, and dispense some measure of justice. Without him, the realm descends into chaos, driven by emotion and short-term thinking and personal vendettas. Cersei's paranoia grows unchecked without her father to rein her in. Joffrey's sadism escalates without Tywin there to slap him down. The Tyrells scheme more boldly because they do not fear consequences. The small folk suffer most, as they always do when great lords play their games of thrones. The war that might have ended quickly under Tywin's management instead drags on for years in smaller conflicts and rebellions, bleeding the realm dry of men and resources and hope. Bandits and broken men roam the countryside, preying on villages that have nothing left to give. Whole regions are burned or starved into submission. The faith militant rises again, adding religious fanaticism to the already toxic mix of politics and warfare, causing new problems that no one anticipated. And through it all, winter approaches with inexorable certainty. The maesters in the citadel send ravens warning that the longest summer in living memory is ending. Winter is coming, as the Starks always said. And when it arrives, it will find the Seven Kingdoms unprepared, divided, and led by fools and children. The White Walkers stir beyond the wall, ancient evils waking from thousand-year slumbers. The Night's Watch sends desperate messages south begging for men and supplies, but no one listens because they are too busy fighting each other over a throne made of swords. The real threat, the existential danger that could destroy all of humanity, is ignored while petty kings squabble over crowns. But that is a story for another time, a different chapter in the long history of ice and fire. Years later, when the wars are finally over and a new order has emerged from the ashes of the old, when the survivors pick through rubble and count their dead, the Maesters will write their histories in the Citadel. They will note that the War of the Five Kings fundamentally changed when Tywin Lannister died mysteriously at Harrenhal. Some will call it the turning point of the entire conflict, the moment when everything shifted. Others will argue it was merely one event among many, important but not decisive, a footnote in a larger story. None will know the truth. None will know that a young girl with a coin from Braavos and a debt owed by a mysterious assassin set those events in motion with 3 words whispered in darkness. None will connect the death of the mighty hand to the serving girl named Arya, who disappeared from Harrenhal the same week. The investigation will remain forever unsolved, one of the great mysteries of the age. Arya Stark keeps that secret for the rest of her life, locked away in the same place she keeps all her pain and rage. Even when she finally returns to Westeros years later, even when she reclaims her name and her birthright as a Stark of Winterfell, even when she stands in the halls of power and helps decide the fate of kingdoms, she never tells anyone what she did that night in Harrenhal. Because some deaths are too powerful to claim as your own. Some secrets are too dangerous to reveal, even to those you trust most. And some choices, once made, can never be unmade or fully understood in their complexity and consequences. She named Tywin Lannister, and in doing so, she changed the world. Whether that change was for better or worse, whether it saved lives or cost them in the end, whether it mattered at all in the grand scheme of fate and destiny and the inexorable march of history, she will never know for certain. What she does know, what keeps her awake some nights staring at stone ceilings, is that her choice had consequences far beyond what she intended. She wanted revenge. She wanted to hurt the people who hurt her family. She wanted to strike a blow that mattered, and she did all of those things. But she also learned that the Game of Thrones is more complex than simple revenge. That killing one player does not end the game, but merely changes which pieces are on the board. That unintended consequences ripple outward like stones thrown in still water, creating waves that reach shores you never imagined. All she knows with painful certainty is that when she whispered Tywin's name to Jaqen H'ghar in the shadows of Harrenhal, when she used her third and final gift, she set in motion events that no one, not even the 3-eyed raven with his visions of past and future, could have predicted or controlled. She proved that a single person, even a child, even a girl that everyone underestimated and ignored and treated as invisible, could reshape history with words. And in the end, perhaps that is the real lesson of the Game of Thrones, the truth that underlies all the battles and betrayals and political maneuvering. Power resides where men believe it resides. Resides where men believe it resides. A serving girl has no power in the eyes of the world, and therefore no one watches her, no one suspects her, no one protects against her. Right up until the moment she destroys the most powerful man in Westeros with 3 words spoken in darkness. The faceless men understand this truth. Death is the great equalizer, the one power that does not care about birth or wealth or titles. A knife in the dark kills a king just as easily as it kills a peasant. Perhaps more easily because the king believes himself safe, while the peasant knows he is always in danger. Valar Morghulis. All men must die, rich or poor, powerful or weak, loved or hated. In the end, death comes for everyone. Even lions, especially lions who forget that arrogance is the greatest vulnerability. Tywin Lannister spent his entire life building an empire of fear and gold, teaching everyone that the Lannisters always pay their debts and always destroy their enemies. He drowned the reins in their minds and wrote a song about it that would be sung for generations. He crushed every rebellion, won every war, outmaneuvered every rival. But he made one mistake. He got comfortable. He believed himself untouchable. He stopped looking for threats from below because he could not imagine that anything so far beneath his notice could possibly harm him. And that mistake, that one moment of human vulnerability, cost him everything and changed the course of Westeros forever. The serving girl he never noticed, the child he never saw as a threat, the little wolf in sheep's clothing, killed him as easily as one might swat a fly. And the world trembled.